Welcome back to Weems Motor Co. Today we are going to save a really historic motorcycle. Stick around. From the earliest days of motorcycles, riders have found a sense of community in sharing their experiences with others while on two wheels. Riders as early as 1903 began to form small groups known as motorcycle clubs to meet, ride, and share their passion. Many of these clubs were established to compete in rider competitions or races. The earliest motorcycle clubs known are the Yonkers MC in New York, founded in 1903, San Francisco MC, November 1904, Oakland MC, August 1907, and Pasadena Motorcycle Club, founded in 1907. Founded in 1924, the American Motorcyclists Association, also known as the AMA, was a group of like-minded riders who established a national organization devoted to serving all of America's motorcyclists. One of the original experiences of the AMA were Gypsy Tours. Gypsy Tours were gatherings of riders from all across the country converging on a single destination. These Gypsy Tours bring like-minded riders together to enjoy the fellowship of motorcycling, often in a location of particular beauty, historic significance, or importance to the sport. During these early days of Gypsy Tours and racing clubs, Triumph's other British motorcycles were the bikes of choice, as their high horsepower engines and lightweight frames offered a higher level of performance compared to their American-made competitors. So in 1947, the 4th of July weekend in particular, the AMA sanctioned a Gypsy Tour right in the middle of Hollister, California. Now, this event was particularly special in history, as a lot of soldiers were returning home from World War II, and they were just getting back into motorcycling after being gone so long. And this little town only housed about 4,500 people. It just so happened that that weekend in Hollister, California, for that particular Gypsy Tour, 4,000 motorcyclists converged on one place. Now, some of those riders were independent riders, and some of those belonged to racing clubs, and just a group of guys that decided, like, hey, let's go out and take these cool old motorcycles and have a blast. Well, some of those clubs in particular that went to Hollister that weekend were the 13 Rebels. Now, this club was founded in 1937 by the 13 top American Motorcycle Association motorcycle racers in Southern California. This club still exists, and they are still part of the AMA Association. Another club that was there that weekend in Hollister, California was the Whisky Fighters MC. Now, MC stands for Motorcycle Club. They were founded in 1946 by a man named Willie Faulkner when he crashed his motorcycle through a gate during a race event and joined in on the fun. He was kicked out of the 13 Rebels MC because of his loose cannon antics. This club is still around today, however, they are no longer part of the AMA. Another one of the clubs that was in attendance at the Hollister event was a group called the Moonshiners MC. Now, you guys might be familiar with these, as I have a friend of mine who's part of this motorcycle club still to this today, and we did a little video at his place in California. Go back, check out that video. It's an amazing time. He's got a lot of the memorabilia, but this particular club was founded in 1934 in Compton, California. Today, they are still around, they still race, they still compete. It's still an amazing group of riders on vintage motorcycles. However, they are no longer part of the AMA. There were many motorcycle clubs and groups that were there that weekend in Hollister, California. However, the last group that we're going to share is the Galloping Goose MC. These guys were formed in 1942 in Los Angeles, California, still around today and no longer part of the AMA. So let's talk about this Hollister event, this riot, this thing that happened when 4,000 motorcycles converged on a town of 4,500 people. Obviously, they did not have the structure to be able to provide hotel rooms, lodging, food, drinks, and overall just be able to hold 4,000 people, doubling their basic population for the town. So you can only imagine the chaos of events that happen when they stop serving food, when they don't have a place for you to sleep. People tend to get riled up a little bit, and that's what happened there in Hollister, California. So following the events that weekend of July 4th, 1947, titled the Hollister Riot, the AMA purportedly released a statement saying that they had no involvement in the riot, and the trouble was caused by the 1% deviant that tarnishes the public image of both motorcycles and motorcyclists, and that the other 99% of motorcycles are good, decent, law-abiding citizens. This idea of the 1% began to mold a new type of rider and club. Outlaw motorcycle clubs first appeared in the United States as returning soldiers with few job opportunities formed motorcycle clubs to regain bonds of brotherhood. Many of the original riding and racing clubs began to separate themselves from the AMA rules and standards. It wasn't until the late 1960s when the clubs required members to ride American-made motorcycles only.
You remember the Hollister situation when Hollister was broken up? Was that Hell's Angels?
I've read about it and heard people talk about it. It was Hell's Angels and the Gooses, but it was greatly exaggerated.
Alright, so let's go back a little bit and talk about that one particular club called the Galloping Goose Motorcycle Club. It was founded in Los Angeles, 1942. However, they were just a bunch of friends hanging out unofficially on their motorcycles and racing. It wasn't until 1946 that they became an official club. Galloping Goose was the name of the motorcycle owned by Dick Hirschberg. The word Galloping Goose and the image of a running finger seen on the Galloping Goose Motorcycle Club patch was painted on his gas tank. This was designed by John Altoon. The patch was initially made up for a sweater rather than a leather vest. These 13 members were known as the Galloping Goose or the GG Bunch. The Galloping Goose Motorcycle Club were well known for their involvement in racing, which led them to being invited to the Hollister Rally in 1947. After the Hollister Riot, the Galloping Goose Motorcycle Club shut down for a year, but then reformed in Los Angeles. Alright, so by now you're probably saying, Weems, that's a lot of historical information. Well, I have a heart and a passion for history, and especially when it comes to old motorcycles, and you guys know that's what we do around here, old motorcycles. Well, why are we talking so much about clubs and the history of them and what's going on? Well, the motorcycle that we are picking up today has a history leading all the way back to the Hollister Riot, and in particular the Galloping Goose Motorcycle Club. Now, I'm not affiliated with any of these motorcycle clubs that have been mentioned in this video. However, I do love the history of motorcycles, and you know, as they say, knowledge is power. So I want to share what I know with you guys so we can tell the story of this motorcycle we're picking up today. And let me tell you, it is one great story. Before we make it a little bit further in this video and the history of this bike, just want to let everybody know, head over to weemsmotorco.com. We got all kinds of cool swag. We got shirts, we got these cool hats, we got stickers, we got shop rags, we got all kinds of cool stuff for you guys. Head over to the website, grab you some swag. But right now, let's continue the story of this amazing motorcycle that we are picking up today. A gentleman by the name of Robert Bob Young, also known as the Judge, joined the Galloping Goose MC in 1962 at age 22. In 1964, Bob was arrested and sent to Lompoc prison along with other club members for attempted murder and assault with a deadly weapon. It was a conversation with Robert Kennedy which caused Bob to focus on life after prison. His counselor told him he could not be a lawyer as he was an ex-felon. After applying and being denied to every law school in the state, Bob went to McGeorge School of Law in Sacramento, where he sat in their reception room until the dean would allow him in. The dean allowed him in, but for the 3 years he was there, he was not allowed to ride his motorcycle. After law school, Bob passed the California bar exam the first time he took it. But the California bar would not admit him as he was an ex-felon. He sued the bar and won. Bob opened a criminal law practice and became a public defender. After numerous high-profile cases and several years later, Bob won, and against the odds, on January 5th, 1977, he became the first ex-felon judge in the U.S. While sitting as judge, his motto was, "Who better to evaluate a criminal than an ex-felon?" The judge, Mr. Bob Young, passed away September 15th, 2018 at the age of 77. So as I am sure you guys seeing all the stuff around my garage, like all these little collectibles, man, I got tons of books, like this amazing book from 1968 by Danny Leon. It's just a collection of motorcyclists riding their old bikes. I love history of motorcycles, and this motorcycle that was once owned by the judge, I am excited to get my hands on it. A 1950 Triumph. Pre-unit, factory rigid with all of the custom accoutrements. I'm excited to purchase it because I want to preserve the history of this bike. It's not a motorcycle to be restored, it's a motorcycle to be taken care of, get it mechanically back going so I can get it on the road, very much like our bike, the Rainmaker. But with so much history invested in this bike, it needs to be shared with other people. So that's the idea. Get this motorcycle into our hands, evaluate it, figure out what year possibly this motorcycle could have been built, because the judge is no longer with us and his widow is in her 80s, and all of these things kind of get lost to time. But what's great about this is that a motorcycle always tells a story. The pieces, the parts, the customization all tell little tattletale signs of what year it could have been built. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to scoop up this motorcycle, get it back here to the shop, and we're going to go through all of those little details, all those little accoutrements, all those little customized pieces, and we're going to try our best to identify what year that this motorcycle was built. So come with us. Let's go pick up this motorcycle. Let's go check out how cool it really is. All right, guys, so we're here in an undisclosed location with my buddy Scott, and we're talking about a little piece of history that he has collected up, and we're going to try to tell the story about this amazing motorcycle. So, Scott, man, what's the deal? What's the bike? What's going on? What's the story in this thing?
Well, what we've got is a 1950, at least as it's titled. As you can tell, a mix and match of many different years and parts. Best as we can tell, it was built in around 1970, 72. The gentleman who built it was Bob Young, who was a former member of the Galloping Goose. Also the first felon in California to get pass the bar exam, become a lawyer, which is what he did for the rest of his career.
Yeah, man.
Pretty crazy transition from, motorcycle club to being a judge by the end of it all.
I love it. I think it's one of the cooler bikes that I've come across in a long time.
Yeah, I just love the simplicity of that style of job.
Yeah.
No mufflers, no solo seat with some springs, just sleek, get you down the road, and
less is more.
Yeah.
Take off all the heavy, big, bulky crap.
Yep.
and throw on some cool handlebars and rip it. And man, if parts of motorcycles could tell stories,
oh, it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
It would be amazing. Yeah, I can't imagine the miles it's seen.
So, when did you come across this motorcycle?
I got this bike back in 2020. There was a raffle online for it. It was Auto Deutsch from Biltwell.
Yep, Mike.
Yep, Mike. And I thought, you know, there's only 75 tickets. It's a gorgeous bike. I'll put the $100 in, see what happens. Knowing the history, knowing that it was the judge's bike, knowing that the Galloping Goose was who turned my dad on to motorcycle riding back in the late 60s. I felt a connection with it. You know, my dad was a Triumph guy, rode a bike similar to this. I couldn't pass it up. Something said buy a ticket.
Yeah.
So I got a ticket, and a couple days later, I saw the post that I had won, and I was floored.
Yeah.
I left work. I came right home. Tried to make arrangements for everything. It was amazing.
For winning it in a raffle, you know, man, kudos to you, dude. That's super cool. You know, looking at the bike, you know, the Bates seat, the Hap Jones tank, the Superior fork shrouds, the Bates headlight with the dual side mount. I'm pretty sure those are probably Flanders bars. The old Wassel duckbill fender, Lucas aluminum rear tail light, and then I haven't even got close enough. I'm assuming those are probably either Akron or Barani rims. You know, it's like the guy really, you know, had access to the right parts to make that bike look what it is without going, you know, like what you're saying, make it unrideable. That is a very rideable motorcycle, and I'm sure, you know, the judge put some hard miles on those things. Those guys out in California, they build bikes to ride them, and it's not. You can tell it's not a show bike.
Right.
It wasn't built as a show. It was built as a go bike. So, but he used some really great stuff, and keeping the original exhaust on there, the original rigid pre-unit exhaust. Yeah, super cool. I mean, it's a rad bike, man.
Yeah, I figured it deserves a new lease on life right now.
Well, that's kind of where the story's leading into. So I'm going to be blessed with the new ownership of this super cool 1950 Triumph from the judge, and our goal is to, you know, maintain the history of it. I'm not going to restore it. I'm not going to sand anything. I'm going to keep it exactly the way it is now because I think it deserves to stay that way. We'll go through and do a mechanical restoration, and, you know, the biggest goal in all is to get the bike back on the road. You won the bike and you didn't mess with it, and that's a great thing. You don't want to be so much that, you know, you win something and you have to automatically go in and tear it apart.
Well, I say after our conversations and knowing you kind of shared my vision on it as well, it was an easy decision to transfer ownership. You know,
well, I'll tell you what, and on camera and before everybody watching the YouTube video, you will be riding this motorcycle. So I will get the bike running, I will get the bike riding, and you will take a ride on that bike because you're a part of the history just as much as me, and then whoever gets it after me, I'll be dead whenever the next person gets it. It's not going away. It's staying at Weems Motor Co. for at least for as long as I'm around Weems Motor Co. So yeah, so you're definitely a part of the history. You're going to get a chance to ride it, and it might not take as long as you think. Well, awesome. Well, let's get this bike loaded up, get it back over to Weems Motor Co. and start the process of getting this old 1950 Triumph back out on the road. Stick around, guys. Alright guys, so here we are. We got the bike back to Weems Motor Co. and oh my gosh, I am in love. It's such an amazing motorcycle. All the patina, all of the style and customization oozing out of this thing is nothing more than amazing. So, some things to talk about this bike as we're trying to discover, you know, what year this bike possibly could have been built. I looked at the frame on this thing and looked at the serial number and found that it's a 1950 Triumph. However, some of the things on that engine just don't mesh with 1950. The aluminum head and just a few other things like this tachometer feed on the timing cover. Those things were not around in 1950. So we're thinking that the motor is possibly around 1956, 1957, and the only real way to tell that is to pull this cover off. There's some markings on the inside of that can help us to distinguish what year that motor actually is. Alright guys, so another thing we noticed on this bike is these wheels. Now these wheels are not stock parts. These are not something you could have ordered from the factory. These are aluminum shouldered rims, a performance item that a lot of guys were using back in the day, and this particular brand of shouldered aluminum rims are from a company called Acron. Now Acron started making these wheels around the early 1950s. Another cool modification to this bike is this gas tank. Now this gas tank in particular, most people think, oh, that's a Wassel peanut tank. No, this isn't a Wassel peanut tank. This is actually made by a company called Hap Jones. The way to tell that is the cap is very small. It's actually the same size as what the oil tank would be. These Hap Jones tanks began to be distributed around 1959. So that's narrowing down the range. We got the motor as being a 56, 57, frame 1950, these wheels from the 50s. So everything's in the 50s, including that Hap Jones tank that started to be distributed around 1959. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, is a pretty special thing. This crusty old leather covered solo seat was made by a company called Bates. Now Bates seats, these seats in particular, even in this condition, go for a lot of money these days. This one's pretty toasted, but you know, the leather's not cracking. It's kind of pliable a little bit, but you know, what's cool about this company is Bates, they started making these solo seats around 1948. So once again, it's giving us a date code to possibly when this motorcycle could have been built. Alright, so another custom item that we find on this bike that is not stock, it was something customized, are these fork shrouds, this headlight, and this headlight mount. Now, I've been around these bikes for more than a day or two, and I realized that these particular fork shrouds are made by a company called Superior. The way to tell that is because the bottoms of them are flanged out. Also on the headlight mounts from this company called Superior, it was stamped saying made in Japan. Super cool to see these. I've seen these all the way back in catalogs, all the way back to 1955. So once again, another little date code to find out when this motorcycle could have been assembled. Another thing a lot of people don't pay a whole lot of particular attention to is the tires. Now, in 1971, it was standardized that you would put a 3-digit code on tires letting you know the age of them. It changed to 4 digits in the year 2000. However, these motorcycles' tires don't have any date codes on them, so that lets us know that these had to be made prior to 1971. Another tattletale sign is this particular Dunlop Gold Seal K70 tire is stamped right there and it says made in Great Britain. Well, Dunlop tires stopped putting that stamp on there in 1980. So we know that definitely these tires are before 1971 because they don't have a date code on them. And I believe these to be original on the bike. So another little tattletale sign to figure out when this motorcycle was built. And another custom item on this motorcycle is this rear fender. Now this thing is super cool. It's not very thick, it's kind of flimsy a little bit, but these are found on a lot of old vintage choppers, especially with that rib right down the center of it. This fender is made by a company called Wassel. Well, the Wassel company began making products all the way back to 1946. So that gives us a little bit wide range. I mean, we know that the frame on this is 1950, the engine's around 1956, 1957, but we can't credit a fender made in the 40s to say that this motorcycle was made then, because the frame wasn't even made then. But it's another great item, as these things are pretty cool and pretty neat to have on your old vintage chopper. All right, so you're saying to yourself, Weems, it's all over the place. A lot of different dates, a lot of different years, a lot of different options. How do you figure it out? How do you figure it out? Well, you dig deeper. You look at things like the wiring on there. You look at some of the bolts and hardware and things like that. And some of those things sometime will tell you a story. So what we find back here on this Wassel fender are nylon insert locking nuts. Now, these nuts, I know, were not invented and had a patent on until 1964. So, that's narrowing down the options for this motorcycle being built sometime after 1964. If it was built before then, it would not have those nylon locking nuts. Alright guys, so that is the story of this motorcycle. A lot of different pieces, a lot of different parts, all telling their own little stories. So the best thing that I could come up with, without talking to the judge himself who built this amazing Triumph chopper, would be that this was built sometime between 1964 and 1971. I'm gonna go with the late 60s. Super cool that this motorcycle has survived in the state that it is. It's went through, I think, 3 or 4 hands before coming to me, and it's great that no one actually abused, or no one took it apart, or no one took parts off or added parts on, that they kept it in the original condition that the bike was owned when the judge from the Galloping Goose MC owned this motorcycle. Now our goal, our plan in this motorcycle is to do a mechanical restoration, get everything working as it's supposed to. Yeah, we're gonna have to toss some new tires on there. However, I'm gonna put the same exact style tires that are on it right now, just new ones, not dry rotted. And get this bike back out on the road. So number 1, Scott, the guy who I got it from, can take it for a ride. And number 2, so we can begin taking this bike out to shows so that you guys that watch the channel can see this bike in person and experience it for yourself. Well, with that, that's wrapping up our video today. We thank you guys for hanging out. It's been a blast discovering, finding, researching, and doing all of the work on this amazing 1950 Triumph from the judge. Thank you guys for hanging out. If you are new around here, jump down and hit that subscribe button. If you really like the video, hit that thumbs up, turn those notifications on, and let everyone know what's going on right here at Weems Motor Co. Peace.